Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Liam, the Prove It Guy, author of Limitation Is A Mirage. In this podcast, I will be sharing with you actionable tips, routines, and insights that I have gathered over 20 years of extensive study with masters, experts, and world-class performers. My hope with this podcast is to save you time, money, and frustration, helping you fast-track your way to mastery. Hey, it's Liam, the Prove It Guy. Welcome to the bonus episode of the Limitation Is A Mirage podcast. This episode has my good friend and mentor, Ben Cardall. He is the Deductionist, and he has mentored me in memory skills, observation, and how to incorporate all of that into my day-to-day life. So we met about, I think it was about 8 years ago, and we've become good friends since then. We've studied under each other. I've taught him some of my skills. He's taught me some of his. So this conversation, we just sort of delve into who he is and why he does what he does. He's actually, the easiest way to describe him is he is Sherlock Holmes. If you took Sherlock Holmes, put him in 2020 with a beard, that's what you would get. So I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next podcast. Hey guys, welcome to this bonus episode of the Limitation Is A Mirage podcast. I am here with my good friend and mentor, Ben Cardall. Please give us a little introduction to who you are so everybody knows why we're talking.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. My name's Ben Cardall. I'm author of the best-selling book, The Monographs, which details the reality of using Sherlock Holmes' skill set in the 21st century. What would be in his head to allow him to do what he does, how to train, how to develop that, and the techniques that would allow you to have that skill set for yourself. And I spend my days at the moment teaching mostly people from private security and those in close protection who can really benefit directly from these skills as well.
I always tell people when I talk about you, I'm like, just think about if Sherlock Holmes was placed in the now, he would have a beard, and that would be it. So you're basically everything that we see on TV. I know that TV overemphasizes things and like makes things a bit more elaborate, but I've watched you in real life, and you've mentored me for a long time on memory, on observation, and all that sort of stuff. How do you think it's hard for like the average human to develop these sorts of skills?
No, not at all. Because though they can appear to make you seem super intelligent, it's all got to start somewhere, right? And the whole thing that I find with people that come to me for tuition is they are more concerned with how to start. It's more about simply starting the journey. You can get particularly bogged down in an overabundance of details in terms of, I should work on this skill or find out what this means or what this body language tell means, and then never actually start your journey because you're so worried about where the best place to be would to start from would be, right? So that's why people come to me, because I've at this point now been doing it for, what are we, 2020? So just shy of 20 years. And I would then make sure that it's tailor-made to whatever kind of person it is or whatever kind of vocation it is that you're going to be utilizing those skills for. So it's more direct, it's more accurate that way. And that's the reason for the creation of the monographs. It's each chapter was laid out like the spokes of a bike wheel. You put them all together and you've got like a complete wheel, if you'll go with me on a fairly weird metaphor. But yeah, so that's why it starts from mindset, and it moves into memory, then it moves into the next, then it moves into the next, and it moves into the next, to give you the tools yourself to get this going. Because, oh boy, once it does start for yourself, you'll see some incredible results.
I remember when we first started talking about it, we met on my Skills of the Vagabond course, and then we started talking about different things, and I likened it to whenever, because I was PTing at that stage, when people would say things, oh, I would love to train with you, but I'm just not fit enough to go to the gym. Like, well, what is your plan to just magically become fit? And people would have been saying the same sort of stuff when I would direct them towards your teaching to go and learn with Ben. Oh, I wouldn't be ready for that. What is it you're not ready for? I don't know. Like, people don't know what they're not ready for. They don't know where to start. So the fact that you've been doing this for 20 years, I was initially just going to ask, how long have you been doing it? What way you do it? But because you've been doing it for 20 years, I want people to realize that, same as with my martial art background, it's 20 years now, but I'm not just a martial artist when I'm practicing stuff or hitting things. It's all day, every day in my everyday life. So you're not just, you don't practice Sherlockian type things and then go about your day to day. You are a Sherlockian and your day to day fits around that. Would that be correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the same with any sort of skill that you're looking to develop. Though, you know, you've got to do it for a number of years to get to that point where it becomes unconscious. Like, you know, it happens automatically. But because of how, well, I suppose neurotic would probably be the best word. How neurotic I am for training and development. Much like yourself, those 20 years flew by because I'm not missing a day. You know, there's at least a good number of hours every single day that I'm working on developing this technique or practicing this skill or testing myself. You know, I think that's what's lacking with a lot of the skill sets that exist mainly up here. You know, there's a lot of books on techniques and how to do this and how to think yourself happier, or whatever the name of a random self-help would be, a self-help book would be. But there's no sort of people testing it. There's no people saying, okay, this works, this doesn't. Well, at least very few, anyway. So yeah, that's been my primary focus. But yeah, as you say, like, I am a Sherlockian through and through. You know, like I listen to the audiobooks when I'm sick. I watch the films when I want to relax. When I'm looking to my dog's just trying to get involved. When I'm looking to engage in a new hobby, I'll find a way of relating it towards what it is that I do. Like, currently, I'm teaching myself Mandarin and French, and it's only for the uses of meeting and discussing with my current students who are from China and France, so I can reach them more appropriately. Then I'm able to do that through some of the memory techniques that I've developed as a part of this, this way of life.
I think the way the ended there is perfect. It's a way of life. It's not about, like, when I first came to you, I wanted to learn some of the memory techniques for when I was performing on stage. So I'd remember the scripts that I had wrote. I'd remember bullet points. I'd remember who has which card or which item or where I chose the person from. So I just seen it as that. And one of my favorite memories of our working together at the start was whenever you used to just randomly send me riddles. And the goal was, in my head, was to get me thinking more, and you just send me a riddle. And I remember sitting out in my front garden in the first riddle, and I'm like, how is this related to memory? What is he talking about? And I must have spent about an hour trying to work it out. I don't think I got the first one, and whenever you told me it, I was like, oh. And I remember you said then that I was overthinking part of it was about a gate, and I was fixated on the gate, and I was like, why is the gate closed? Why is that relevant? And in fact, it was the parachute. It wasn't the gate at all. I'll never forget that riddle. It's just always was in my head. But that taught me to think more, pay more attention, I suppose. I was going to say think more critically, but not even, just pay more attention, observe more, and then start to use that. And then now, whenever I'm remembering things on stage, it just happens nearly. But it only just happens because I followed the guide that you had given me and that you had taken me on. I followed it, and then one day I just remember stuff. Remember, like, when you were over here and you say, name the waitress, and you name her, and they're like, the people with me are like, how did you know that? And I could, she's wearing a name tag, but I registered it subconsciously because you just get used to that sort of paying attention.
Yeah.
That sort of leads me to, I know how I got to be the way I am. I just, from my childhood and stuff, and then I just sort of forced myself to start learning things that I was really interested in. So to find out how you got to where you are, so if you could tell a story from your childhood that like would typify what some that your parents did that would typify your experience from like 5 to 10, what would that be?
As a kid, I was always really obsessed with trying everything, every hobby that I came across. And the thing that sticks out to me about that I'm really fortunate with my folks. They were always go do, but do it with everything you've got. So like if I wanted to go to basketball training, which I did for a while, I was there 4 times a week. And then when I started martial arts, that was there 6 times a week, which then led into the sort of the precursor training for the stuntman community. We went on horse riding training. They set me on fire a couple of times. My folks instilled into me that idea that if you're going to do it, you give it everything. You don't half-arse it. You don't make any excuses. You put the work in until it happens for you. And I think it gave me that understanding of never really being afraid of, rolling up my sleeves and going, right, I want this. Not a case of like 5-minute abs or Googling it to find the answer. I want this. It's going to take me 6 months of good hard work to do it. Let's get this done. It was a case of anything I ever asked them about, they were all, yes, we'll find a way. Yes, we'll find a way. And it started in Beavers, when I went to Beavers. And then some kid purposefully kicked a football at me and I didn't like it. I was quite a timid young boy. And I told my parents that I didn't want to go back. They was, why? I had to tell them exactly why, and that he made me feel uncomfortable. They were like, that's no problem. What else do you want to do instead? I was like, I've been quite interested in music at that time because I was a real big fan of the Batman show. And I liked the guy at the front who did, and I wanted to learn how to play that on the guitar. Next day, they found me, it was a dirt cheap, rusty, I think it had about 4 strings on it at the start, completely out of tune. But they were like, look, we've got this. Let's find you a teacher. Let's get it done. And I think that's really going to be the best. I know it encompasses a lot of stories, but that's going to be the best sort of overarching narrative that I could really tell about my parents. Whatever I wanted to do when I was a kid, they would find a way for me to be able to do it. They weren't about making sure we had Sky TV or fancy cars or the newest Nike trainers. We went and learned stuff. We went on holidays and talked about history, and that was just my childhood, and it's slowly spun completely out of control as a grown up now, into just a deep need to understand everything.
I love that your parents asked why. So you wanted to give up Beavers. A lot of parents, and I would have seen it when I worked in youth clubs and stuff, the kid would want to quit because they were no good at something or whatever the reason was. And the parent would go, right, that's fine. And you'd be like, what is your kid learning? Your kid isn't learning anything there except that it can not like something and then quit and just not do it. Whereas your parents said why, and if you had just said I don't like it, they probably would have just get back in there. Get back in there till you like it. Yeah.
To be fair, that happened, and mostly with school activities, we had to do. It was like our own version of a general election. We had a series of people in our year. There was a group of us that were from the Labour Party. There was a group of us from the Tories, and there was a group of us from the Liberal Democrats. and I got made the leader of the Labour Party, and I was like, Mum, I don't want to do it. And she was like, why? I was like, because it's boring. And that was distinctly my answer. It was at the first year of high school, so I'm maybe 12, 13 at the time. It's like, it's boring, Mum. And she was like, no, go and do it. You might learn something. And I distinctly remember it. Right? She just finished her shift at HSBC. She was still in a uniform. I remember leaning down to me because I was sulking in the chair at the time. I want to do it. You might learn something. And it just sort of echoes in my head now. You know,
It makes sense now from whenever we first, because I'm kind of like you, whenever I want to learn something, it's why I found you. I wanted to be better at observing. I wanted to improve my memory. So rather than going reading a book, I just searched for the guy who was the most advanced and the person that everybody and who was my like peers were saying, you want to learn this, you need to go to this guy. That's when I was like, hello, Ben. I'm an Irish guy you've never met. Teach me the ways. And now that you're sort of talking about the way your mum put it across, there was things that you, like whenever we first started doing the peg system and lists, I didn't care because that didn't meet what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn stagecraft and how to memorize stuff for stage. And you're like, just learn, like, just do it. Like, can't just say it's boring, just do it. If you don't like it, come back to me after you learned it. So even if I learned it and didn't like it, it's already in there now. And I can't get rid of it. It's just part of the training. So it kind of now makes sense as to how you train and teach the way that you do. And what I really like about it is that you have so many, like you talked about the stunt work and you talked about just being in the debate team, which I didn't even know existed outside of America. So you're in the debate team now. Next you'll be saying you're in Glee or whatever.
No.
because you've done this whole wide scope of things, it makes sense now why you're able to break down everything you teach, which I find is really important. If you want to teach something, you have to be able to break it down to teach it to a 5-year-old, even if that 5-year-old's a 50-year-old man. Do you feel the same about that whenever it comes to getting things across? That I know you had that ability because I've witnessed it, but
well, thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely, because you never know who you're going to be talking to as part of the coaching sessions until you start speaking to them. You never know what their level of understanding is on a particular topic that you're looking to discuss. So you have to immediately be able to apply my knowledge to your understanding. You know, it's like the old adage of putting the water into a cup, it becomes the cup, right? Because I've got such a vast experience of all of this from as many different sides as you could possibly think about. Any question or lack of understanding on a particular technique or how to make it work for you in this scenario, I will be able to help with because I've got the experience there. And which, you know, I find a lot of people don't seem to what's the right word? Be quite skeptical of how much experience somebody of my age can have. But when you break it down in like a CV almost, you know, I've been very fortunate enough. I'm not taking anything away from that, but I've also put the work in to be able to make sure that I can help anybody that wants to spend some time with me. And I think that's what you want in somebody who you come to for mentoring, you know, much in the same way like when I spoke to you about certain fitness or flexibility practices that I was struggling with. And that I remember there was one time I'm in Pure Gym, and I just sent you a couple of photos, just of the way I was performing my squats at the time. And you spoke about the alignment of my hips, and it was like you only specifically said move your toes in this direction, and you find you can dip a lot lower. And then it was from then on, and if you remember, it was on the second Vagabond day, I spent most of the day sat in a sumo squat position just because I could. And you got that from a couple of pictures, which I think, it speaks a lot about your experience. And the same I can try and say about mine. It's only because we've lived that we're able to point you in the right direction as often as possible.
Whenever you talk about the CV idea and the experience, I know whenever I first got into corporate, especially because I came from a martial arts and then a magician background, and people were like, well, you can't have much experience of this. And I was like, I've managed restaurants, I've managed youth clubs, I've worked in pubs for years. Like, just because we are young, still young, people, in my experience, most people have hobbies that they dabble at here and there. I remember, like, when I first moved to London and talking to a guy, and he was like, I've been doing martial arts for a year. I've been doing this for a year and I'm not very good. And I was like, how many times do you come to class a week? Once? How many hours is that? 1 hour a week. Do you do any training at home? Not really. And I was like, right, so you've done martial arts for about 365 hours. That's not a lot. I was like, I'm in this club 11 hours a day. I do my morning routine. I meditate at night. Like, so my day might be 16 hours, but it's like, so we can cram more of our training and skill set into what most people do in a year hobby. We might cover in a month, because people aren't used to, like, deep. Whenever we say we deep dive into things, same as when Craig was on the last podcast. When we deep dive, like, we go
go all out.
We go, yeah, everything. And like, I remember, like, an ex-girlfriend, she was my girlfriend at the time, complaining because every time she went to hold my hand, there was a coin or a deck of cards or something in it. It's like, you're always practicing. I'm like, because I want to be the best. When I start stuff, I want to be the best. That's why I look for people like yourself, because when I want to learn something, I want to learn from the best. So that, like, I will never catch you. I know I won't, but I will. My whole life, I'll be able to strive towards that. And I know we would have the same sort of experiences when we go into corporate. Like you said at the start of this, that you mostly work with security and that sort of thing. But I know from knowing you for years, you work with everyone. You've worked with Fortune 500. You've worked with everything. So that's the skill set that you have comes from a wealth of knowledge, but an extreme amount of, like, I'm not going to say we're obsessive about our practice. There's no nicer word for that. So I just thought that was an important point to put across. You have done so much of this that I knew that it would take me, I said it to you on the phone the first day we spoke, it will take me 6 months to get to where I want to go. I know you can get me there faster, because you will help me avoid all the pitfalls that I'm going to get doing it. Same as, like, whenever I wanted to learn the Rubik's Cube, I come to you and I say, I want to do this. I know there's a million YouTube videos, but if I look at them, I could end up doing it really slow or bad or whatever. So you have done the things that, so much of it that you know where I would go wrong. And it's just back to the squatting thing. When you squatted, you show me the picture, but in the message, I already know what's about to happen. When you say, can you help me with this? This is what's happening. I'm like, I know what's going to go on here. So now that so we've talked about that, the fact that you've put so much work in. My next question for you is, what failure or apparent failure, like, has set you up for later success? So when you thought you had completely failed, and now when you look back at it, you're like, all right, actually, that was brilliant.
I could think of two from very different sides. There's one story from that's quite a personal story, and sort of really kicked this whole journey into overdrive. It was a failure of a relationship, and that I found out this is when I was 14. Found out that my girlfriend at the time was cheating on me, and I remember thinking, well, yeah, Yeah, I remember thinking, I remember feeling how, like, sort of hollow, and without aim, I felt. And it was at that time that I was reading The Adventure of the Speckled Band as part of my English class. And it really kicked the whole thing off for me from there. And so that's what really led to the obsession, let's call it, with these methods and these techniques. So that one of the single most horrible experience of my life so far actually got me here to where I am talking to you. You know, about these wonderful skills that can do so much good for so many people, which is a very big blessing in disguise, right? And the other was it was I won't really call it a business meeting because it was very informal. It took place in a pub. The guy wanted me to come in and teach his security team about situational awareness, the kind of vigilance one must maintain when working the doors in order to better spot, physical threats, how to deal with them, and how to capitalize on that early. Because, side note, these skills, they will give you that length of time to make such an informed decision about how you're going to proceed further. Right? So I gave him a read of the room, and there was a table that I described, a table full of, I think, 2 people that were there, and they weren't there at the time. I described people when he turned around to have a look afterwards. They weren't there, and it was like, oh. And I was like, oh God, like, did I really see them? And when you start to question your whole reality, emotional qualities become antagonistic to clear reasoning. I really started to doubt myself, and it was sickening. But I was convinced I'd seen these people in my head. I got them described clearly. The woman's shoes, what she was wearing, her hair, the guy's briefcase, what color tie he had on. I could see them, but when he turned around, they weren't there. I had zero explanation for that. And he sort of like give the whole, yeah, okay. Well, we'll be in touch, and you go away thinking, bleep. I've bleep that one up, right? It wasn't until later the next day the guy let me sweat. He'd gone, because this is in his pub, the one he runs. He'd gone back and he'd watched the security tapes, and it turns out that the people had got up and left as I'm reading the room, and I'm talking about these people over here. They got up and left from this side. So when we turned around, they were gone. And he was like, I had to double check, and we, I eventually got the hiring on the back of that as well. But that was well, I suppose technically it wasn't really a mistake, but it felt like a mistake. And I can remember the experiences in my life when I really start to doubt myself, because at this moment there's only been 6. There's only been 6. I train that hard and that often to keep that number as small as I possibly can. So that was one of them that later turned into a real good moment. Was a real, like, so yeah, I knew I was right. Should have stuck to my guns, and you kick yourself. But yeah, they stick out as 2 particular failures that later turned out to be just awesome on the back of it.
I think the first one, like when you were 14, I think that's important because a lot of people have things happen around that age where you're developing into who you are, and a lot of people will just not see anything good off that and just drift off down a bad path. Like, it's funny, we're about the same age when my friends and all found alcohol and drugs, and I found martial arts, and I had a decision to make which path that I want to go on, and it was thankfully I went on the martial art one. But the fact that something that people would consider to be devastating, especially at 14. Like, not only breaking up, but find out that they were cheating. And it kind of now explains the focus on awareness and being observant and understanding people's, because probably if you were aware when you were 14, you would have noticed the signs that were going on. So even though it might have been fueled by a negative thing, it's the fact that it turned into like a massive positive is like amazing. The other thing I like about your other story is I don't think people that do like regular jobs and have like a what would be considered a normal regular life, they don't have interviews like we have. Like our interviews are like dance monkey. You clean, you can do this, do it. Like I remember working in a company and they were saying about, can you make people like with hypnosis or can you make people do whatever you want them to do or agree to do anything? And I was like, well, to an extent. And they just immediately were like, prove it.
Yeah.
I'm like, right. So I pick something random. I just call a woman up to the front of the stage with me and I shake her hand and ask her, instead of saying, what's your name? I just said, if you could choose a name, what would it be? Which kind of interrupted her pattern and threw her, and she called herself Rachel or something, I think. So then I just called her Rachel for the rest of the time. And then maybe about 40, 50 seconds later, I said to her, sorry, what was your name again? And she went, oh, it's Rachel. And I asked the room, is it Rachel? And they were like, no. And she, first of all, responded with, no, it is I. And then went, no, I'm not Rachel. And then went on. And then they hired me to do the job that like there I was just there to perform, but a job interview with a performance, most people don't like really live that. My next question for you is, I love this question. What bad recommendations do you hear in your area of expertise? And what like better advice would you give, or real advice? So what are the bad recommendations you hear first?
About what I do, or
about your expertise. So if I'm coming to you, there's other people that teach like body language reading and memory work, but so what are the bad advice you hear these people deliver? You don't have to name anyone, obviously, but just what they deliver.
Well, yeah, there's been a couple of things recently with the memory work that you can be hypnotized to remember everything and recall it forever. You know, like no, you can't. And I speak to the people that go on these courses, and they paid like thousands for this apparent secret, technique that some guy's been developing in the foothills of whatever mountain he met his guru at and whatever, for some secret method to allow him to put people to sleep and then wake this capacity within themselves that they would remember everything that they come across. No, that's completely spurious in my experience of research and application. We are human beings, not robots. Even savants, autistic savants, who have these ridiculous memories. As a result, on the flip side, they'll have social developmental disabilities. But speaking specifically about their memories, even they forget things, right? So to claim to be able to give people the ability to remember everything, it's fighting a losing battle at times, because it feeds into that idea that, I can just go for one session and then boom, it's done. I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to work. I don't have to train. I don't have to apply anything. I don't have to think. It makes me furious at times, because if you think about the application of only one or two of the genuine techniques, with maybe 15 to 20 minutes worth of work a day or every other day, if you don't want to do it with too much force, it's going to skyrocket your retention on whatever it is that you choose to pay attention to. Just through 15 minutes worth of work. And these people go, I don't know if I got that. 15 minutes? And it has this sort of negative effect that you have to really help people understand on the back of that there is no magic pill. If you want a technique that's worthy of you and worthy of your skill set, you need to understand it truly and not just go to sleep and wake up the Matrix style. I know Kung Fu. Everybody wants that. What's wrong with the journey? What's wrong with understanding the loopholes and pitfalls and what you had to go through to accomplish this? So that's been a pretty big one.
The problem with that, sorry to interrupt you, but the problem that adds as well is that people then believe the program doesn't work, the systems don't work. None of this works. I tried that. It's like when people go to get off smoking from a hypnotist, that's not great. Sure, hypnosis doesn't work. And you're like, for anything ever? And they're like, no. Because I went to a person and so it sort of kills the industry, which means you're getting questions like, yeah, but how'd you really do that? Like, we would get it when we perform. People come up to us after, like the Jack the Lad of the group, and we go, I know how you did most of that, but there's a few things I don't know. You're like, name one of the things I did. I know what you did. So it sort of hurts the industry. And then when you come along and say, like, if you learn the system and then take 20 minutes to reinforce that every so often, they're like I have to learn a thing and then like practice it. Like for me, the people that can like awaken this within you within one day or whatever, why are they not like world memory champions? Why don't they have all these world records? Why do they need like to work like this? Why can't they just do whatever they want and like become a lawyer tomorrow just by memorizing? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense that they don't live what they're saying. Like they. So what advice would you give? What would you offer instead?
I'd offer an understanding of one technique applied in however many different ways you need it applying to your life, because that same one technique, you could apply it to everything you do as part of your day job. You can apply it to everything that you want to do as part of your hobby. You can apply it to your keys that you can't find, or where you last put your remote control after you watch the TV. You find that most people when they I'm going to watch this movie. Did you enjoy it? Yeah, it was great. What happened? The man did it. Yeah, right. So like even just through one technique, and there are hundreds, right? There are hundreds of techniques. One technique you can apply, everything in your life changes for the better if retention is your end game, right? So that's really what I would say on the back of that, an understanding of just one, and it will take you minutes to understand. It will take you a bit longer to apply it in all of the different ways, but if you've not got that time or that willingness to do that, then either A, you're wrong, or B, you're looking for the magic pill.
Definitely mostly A, whenever people say they don't have the time, because you can, once you learn the technique, you can just practice it anywhere. Like I remember whenever I was working a lot in Belfast, I'd be driving up the road, and if there was anyone in the car with me, I would just say to them, write out a list of words and shout them at me as I drive, and then I would shout them back. But I remember, like, whenever you're saying about how one technique can filter into other things, I remember coming back to you because I think it was from years of working in bars and never trying to remember people's names because it was pointless. You're dealing with thousands of people a weekend. And I remember coming to you and saying, Ben, I can't remember people's names, but I don't think it's because I can't. It's because I don't care. It's just something I've developed. It's like a habit that I've developed. And I remember whenever you taught me the technique for remembering people's names and a few ideas, about a week later I'm coming back to you and going, hear, I don't just remember their names. I remember all the shit that they said to me and what their kids are doing. So when I meet the people again, I can say, "Oh, by the way, how's Jenny and Jimmy getting on?" And they're like, "Oh, God." Or he's still driving the Mazda. I don't know anything about cars and remembering cars, people said. I'm like, so if they tried to get me to point out their Mazda, I wouldn't be able to do it, but I know it's a blue Mazda. So just learning the basic technique and practicing it, it just becomes like an entity that just grows within you. You start to just do it. Like, I love, and like whenever people argue with you and they say all the stuff and you're like, that's not what you said a moment ago. A moment ago you said it was this and this is what you said. So is this really true that you're saying, or are you just acting emotionally here? And they're like, I hate you. But it's just retention. It's just a good example of how the retention just sort of creeps in throughout. So it does become part of your everyday life without forcing it. But obviously, the more you practice, the better it gets. Like when me and Craig talked about memory on the last podcast, I was saying, if you can just remember a list of 10 things, which is a small increase in the general population of what we're designed to remember normally, you're putting yourself like way ahead of the game before you even start. Whenever you can rhyme off more, like whenever you can remember and retain more than the person standing next to you. Even because I worked in bars, it used to really annoy me when people would come up and they'd order like 4 drinks, then they'd go, "Hold on," and they'd run away, and then come back and order 3 more, and you're like, "That was 7 things." And then I would come back and rhyme off the order to them, and they go, how do you remember that?" And you're like, "It's only
because I'm a wizard."
Yeah, because if you want this magic pill. I love the fact that whenever you teach the techniques, and I know because I've spoke to other students when I'm part of your forums and I chat to just other people that have done it, like, you just start remembering stuff. How did you remember that? And you're like, well, if I break it down, it was because I used these 3 techniques that Ben taught me, but when I was absorbing that information, I wasn't going, okay, so first of all, I need to put that into this category. It's like whenever you learn all the skills of fighting and then you spar, you're not standing there going, right, so first thing I'll do is something with this fist and then something with this, and then I'll move this over there. And stuff happens, and then you go, oh, that's all the training I did. Has just filtered into real life. So we're coming near the end, because again, we could talk for hours, so I will definitely just get you back someday. So a question that I am asking everyone, just for my own, because I love it, is if you had a superpower, what would it be? Or if you were a superhero, who would you be?
It's tough to not, like the second question. It's tough to not pick the ones that I'm a fan of, right? It's to try and find one that I feel particularly connected with. I would probably say Professor Hulk. Professor Hulk, for the giant sorts of, but he's also
basically you, Well, you're not green, but aside from the green, but all right. So one of the reasons I love asking this question is because it gives you an insight into who people are without saying, "Tell me a bit about yourself." So because Hulk is super smart but also strong, like we haven't even went into it at all, but you do a lot of physical exercise. You train people in physical exercise. So it just makes sense that it wouldn't just be Hulk. It would be Professor Hulk. If you had a superpower, what would it be, though?
If I think it would definitely be mind reading. I think it would be. I think, like, if it wasn't anything as obvious as that, I'd probably go for something like Doctor Strange's ability, because I like the fact there's a part of that scene where he talks about like, if I did that, I'd just be waving my hands in the air, like, how do I get from here to there? And she says, how did you how do you learn to put a spine back, bone by bone? And he says, study and practice. And she goes,
I love that.
yeah, I think it's brilliant, but I like the good that it can do. You know, I like the fact that it's so multifaceted that there's no situation that it can't improve, right? Whereas if you look at somebody's like regular, average, everyday Hulk, you know, if he were to lean back on a table, the table's getting crushed because he's so big and heavy, right? Yeah. That type of sort of mundanity. There's no mundanity with something that Doctor Strange does, or is an exponent of, or whatever the proper word is. So yeah, I would probably go with Doctor Strange. His powers, whatever that's called.
Wow. I like that the overarching theme of everything when I asked you why you do what you do or how you do what you do is to improve yourself and help people. Everything that you teach people will improve every area of their life. If you had superhero abilities, they have to be designed around improving your life and everyone around you's life. So it's just a very nice like circle just to come back upon. So before we go, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you or reach out to you? Where do they find you? Or
well, you can follow me on a variety of social media. I've got my YouTube account. If you just pop Ben Cardall in, you'll see my big hairy face pop up. You can also follow me on Instagram at BenCardall221B. Failing that, best thing to do would be just to check out my website, www.bencardall.com. You can book in for some Zoom calls, and we can talk about how I can best help you moving forward from there. And there's a direct email connection to my personal telephone that comes right here. It won't just go to the office. It will come direct to me. So yeah.
I'll put all the links to everything below just so it's easier for people to find. But yeah, I really enjoyed this talk and I really appreciate you coming on. So thank you very much, and we will speak to you on the next episode.
Thanks, mate.